Hello everyone, my name is Abdullah Kabaj and you are now tuned in to my second article review. In today's presentation, I'm going to go over a quick introduction, a brief overview of the article I chose to do the case study on. I'm also going to talk about the hypotheses mentioned in the study founded in the article, and I'm going to go over the type of experiment they used, the results they found, and I'm going to wrap up with a conclusion and three key takeaways. Before we jump into it, I want you guys to watch a little clip from a TEDx talk titled, "Are Emotions Contagious to the Workplace?" I think this will set the precedent for the following case study.
She had added all these new systems and structures. The nonprofit was operating in a way it never had before. And that was awesome. The CEO couldn't have been happier. The board couldn't have been happier. But there was this one little nagging issue. Her team. Her team never seemed to really fully get on board with her as their new leader. And within about 6 months, they're going to HR and they're saying things like, I'm just unhappy. I don't like working here. I'm kind of depressed. And they start using words like, she's kind of got a toxic personality. Okay, so being a curious guy, I went to kind of go check that out. So I go walk over to where her team's sitting in the building, and in their area, they've got this bank of cubes. And I walk over there, and I don't hear anything. So I think to myself, well, they've probably all gone to lunch, but I'll check it out anyway. So I turn the corner, and I look around the corner in the cubes, and they're all hunched around a table. And they're all working on their laptops kind of frantically. They're not talking to each other. They've got these kind of serious, sullen faces as if either somebody died or something smells bad. It's just kind of one of those faces. And I kind of wave to the group, and one person kind of waves to me, but then goes back to the laptop. And I think, all right, so they must have gotten bad news today. So I go over and I knock on the COO's office window, and she invites me in. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll see what I've learned. Well, 10 minutes of conversation later, nothing really new has happened. So I leave the office. Here is the most interesting thing in that whole exchange, was how I felt when I left her office. I felt tired.
In this case study, I will review an article on the social influence on group dynamics. The effect of influence on people and groups has always been an interesting topic in our society. The question always begs, what does it take to influence other people's behavior? In this case analysis, I will be covering emotional contagions and cognitive contagions. In simple terms, emotional contagions are the transfer of emotions, and cognitive contagions are the transfer of ideas. These contagions are important to understand group dynamics because it allows us to understand the process and the factor by which individuals are influenced. Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and adhere to the emotional tone of the room, and this is important for managers that lead groups into projects. It's important to point out that emotional contagions are different than cognitive contagions. A person may be able to deliver their ideas to another person without paying attention to the type of emotion they're portraying. A group dynamic works best when ideas and emotions are both transferred and the group as a whole feels the same emotions. The article I will be referencing throughout this case study is called "The Ripple Effects, Emotional Contagions and Its Influence on Group Dynamic." The author is Sigal Barsaid, and this article highlights a study that aims to prove the following 6 hypotheses. 1. There will be contagion of mood among group members. Hypothesis 2. Unpleasant emotions are more likely to lead to mood contagions than are pleasant emotions. Hypothesis 3. The same emotional valence expressed with high energy will lead to more contagion than if expressed with low energy. Hypothesis 4. Positive emotional contagion, that is, an increase in positive mood, will lead to greater cooperativeness on both an individual and group level. Hypothesis 5. Positive emotional contagion, that is, an increase in positive mood, will lead to less group conflict. And hypothesis 6, positive emotional contagion, that is an increase in positive mood, will lead people to rate their own risk, their own task performance, and that of others in the group more highly. As we jump into the case study, I want to note that there are two important factors that were used: emotional valence and emotional energy. As mentioned earlier in the hypotheses, different conditions were administered to test the effect of emotional valence and emotional energy on the emotional contagion. Emotional valence is the type of emotions transferred, whether positive or negative. Emotional energy is the intensity in which that emotional valence was transferred or communicated. A quick overview on the experiment. The researchers in this study used a 2x2 experiment design to test the transfer of moods among people in a group and its influence on work dynamic. Participants in this experiment were business school undergrad, 59 males and 32 females. These participants were to take part in a leaderless group discussion. To control the experiment, there was a confederate in every group that administered a different emotion to test the hypotheses. The four conditions administered by the confederates were cheerful enthusiasm, serene warmth, hostile irritability, and depressed sluggishness. To ensure accurate data, results were recorded through individual self-reports by the participants and video coding analysis of the experiment. As mentioned earlier, this study was an in-depth look into the factors that influence moods in individuals and groups and its influence on group dynamic. In the TEDx talk mentioned in this presentation, the speaker gave an example of a nonprofit that hired a very capable chief operating officer that pushed the company to success, but the team was not happy with their new leader due to the negative emotional contagion. This goes to show that cognitive and emotional contagions should work hand in hand to positively influence work dynamic. With that being said, the results from the experiment showed that emotional contagion does in fact occur in groups and affects all members. The study also showed that emotional valence was not as predicted. Positive emotions were as powerful as negative emotions. This was particularly interesting because previous research had shown that negative emotions were affected by people more than positive emotions. Finally, results also showed that emotional energy showed mixed or no direct effect on work dynamic. Members and groups were more influenced by emotion, both negative or positive, regardless of the intensity. In conclusion, the study shows that people are emotional inductors. People feel the emotional tone of their group or the people they interact with subconsciously. We are emotional creatures. I personally think this study should be reviewed by any business student and especially MBA students. The study teaches future and current managers that success is not only in the method or process of delivering a message or an idea to an individual or a team, but also how you do it, what emotions you portray. My 3 key concepts. One takeaway from this study and the previous one I did on gender and power is the significance of interpersonal skills in today's world. It seems like we leave interpersonal skills to our genetics or personalities, whereas we should teach our younger generation and ourselves how to gain and use interpersonal skills to communicate and understand each other. My second takeaway from this case study is the benefit of emotional intelligence in the workplace. We already established that emotions are highly contagious. Companies and corporations spend so much money developing hierarchies and structures to enhance their organization culture. Leaders with emotional intelligence should be promoted more and given the opportunity to manage their teams based on the emotional tone of the members. And finally, my last takeaway from this case study is the differentiation between the transfer of ideas and the transfer of emotions. This study shows that if someone is able to transfer positive emotions, they are more likely able to influence positive change and work dynamic. I appreciate you tuning in for this presentation. Thank you.